Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Sorry for the delay tonight, but that just means it's going to be more impactful. So, you know what? Welcome to Therapy Tuesdays. And I'm telling you, we have an exciting topic for you on tonight. And I just believe you're going to be blessed by what is going to be said. You'll be able to get some healing. You'll be able to get some things that are just for you, maybe some things that have been going on in you that you didn't even realize was from generations before you. What are we talking about? Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Huh? What is it? Aren't you a church, right? What are you doing talking about slavery and slave syndrome? Well, actually, don't you know that in the Bible, Abraham and Isaac, they resemble the same thing. They both got in situations and they lied about it. But a lot of people don't understand it's because of the things that comes from the generations before you that you end up repeating and you don't even realize it sometimes. So tonight we're going to unpack some things. We're going to talk about the journey that we go to as a people, as a culture, as some things that have been passed down from generation to generation. Some of those things don't feel so good, and some of them are not so nice to talk about. But we're going to dive into it on tonight. So I'm excited about this powerful woman of God, this mother, this friend, this matter of fact. But before we even go there, let me tell y'all something now. I know it's Therapy Tuesday, so we're going to talk about a little therapy. As an adult, I took me a nap today and it was therapeutic. So if you need to get you a nap for about 15 to 20 minutes every now and then, do it because you will feel revitalized and energized because y'all see I'm hyped up and I ain't had no sugar or no coffee. It was a good 15-minute nap. But anyway, there's some things that I read about this young lady that I wanted to share because we're able to do that. And I went to her site earlier and I seen some comments of some people and I was like, oh, look at her. But one of the comments said that she is a person that you can speak to about anything. She's intellectual. She really dives in with you. There's nothing that you can't talk about with her, and she's so personable. You'll feel like you're talking to a sister, a friend, or a mother because when she takes on whatever topic, whatever situation, she doesn't just do it from the therapeutic standpoint, but she also takes it in her heart to understand you. But let me give you a little bit about her. Her name is Miss Janae Ponder. She's a mom. She's a CEO. She's an entrepreneur. She's just all the above. She started LifeSpire Counseling Services. What is LifeSpire Counseling Services? It promotes strength-based practices that encourage to use their strengths and gifts to resolve their problems. Through the process of education and evidence-based practices, clients are motivated to achieve their goals through realistic processes. We want all who we serve to understand that they are resourceful and resilient. One thing about it, you got to be resourceful and resilient in the things that you do in life. LifeSpire is here to help you do that. And let me tell you something, for the people that I've seen her help and the things that I've read about it, she's a phenomenal woman. There's no behind the scenes. It ain't no fluff. What you're getting, I'm telling you, it is worth it. And sometimes as a people, we don't invest in ourselves, but therapy is really about you. So I'm excited about tonight. We're a little late. We don't have a little song besides what we had, so we're just going to jump into it on tonight. But if you can, put some fire in the chat. Welcome Miss Janae Ponder to the stage.
Hey, I'm back again, bringing another topic. Some of this information you may have heard. Like he said, this is something that we don't talk about. A lot of times when we hear the word slavery, we cringe. We feel like we're so far removed. I've heard a lot of older Black people say, I lived that. I don't want to talk about that anymore. And I always say we got to understand where we're headed, where we've been, so that way we don't repeat cycles that keep us stuck and unproductive. So don't get turned off by the word slave. If you're a non-Black person, I encourage you to lean into this conversation and to listen with openness and see this as a learning opportunity. I don't claim to know everything about this topic. I am no researcher on this topic, but I am a reader, a follower of the founder of the term post-traumatic slave syndrome. And today we're going to be looking at living in a reality you're not comfortable and safe in your own skin. As I always say, take care of yourself. Sometimes these topics are triggering. If you feel yourself having heart palpitations or just really uncomfortable, please pause, get up for a walk, or go get some water. By the time I'm done with you today, I hope you have a better understanding of what post traumatic slave syndrome is, also known as PTSS. Understand some complexities about racial trauma that you may have not understood before now. And I want to leave you with a little bit of tips for how to heal in a hostile environment, which is extremely challenging to do, by the way. Some recommendations for success: stay present, lean into this conversation. Please participate. If I ask a question, give me a comment, an emoji, whatever you can do to show that you're paying attention and you're with me. I don't want to be doing this alone. Take notes so that you can internalize the information. That's always extremely helpful. If you're not driving or doing something else, you may want to go back. So to start the discussion, we're going to talk about PTSD, which is a clinical term you guys have probably heard. That term is used widely currently with veterans, post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you guys have your own personal definitions or understanding of what post-traumatic stress disorder, what I want you to do is put what you think it is in the comments. What is post-traumatic stress disorder? And while you guys type, I'm going to tell a little story. So I always like to give a lot of analogies or aligning stories to help build understanding. When my mother took me to buy my first car, I remember her laying on the gas when we were test driving the car. And she laid on the gas because she wanted to see if she could hear knocking or any abnormalities with the car. The purpose was to see if she could hear something that could determine if that car had been in an accident or if that car had been through some kind of trauma or some kind of impact. And cards come with Carfaxes. We are able to see what kind of impact they have had. And unfortunately, people, we don't come with a Carfax. So the impact that we've had, it usually sometimes is unnoticeable. It actually is invisible, but it shows up in how we live, how we process the world, how we survive, and our actions, our behaviors, even in how we eat. It shows up. Yep, and I see a comment: delayed reaction emotion to a past event or situation that has happened to or around someone. That is exactly what post-traumatic stress disorder. So post-traumatic stress disorder is the reaction or the residue that is there after we have had a severe impact. The brain and body is designed to protect itself. When something is significantly overwhelming beyond our control, the brain takes a mental note. Oh, that is too much. We're going to remember that. We're going to stay far away from that. We're going to protect ourselves from that. And anything that comes remotely close to that, I'm going to send off an alarm to your brain and to your body for you to pump the brakes. That is what post-traumatic stress disorder is. And when you guys probably heard the term PTSD or post-traumatic slave syndrome, the idea of post-traumatic stress disorder came up, and that's exactly what it's designed to do. So I want to honor the founder and also honor some of the information that I got from her. Dr. Joy DeGruy, who is an amazing Black researcher on the topic and the founder of post-traumatic slave syndrome. And I want to share one of her quotes. One of my wishes in this discussion is that you will be extremely empowered, especially if you are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and a person of color, or of African descent, and you live in America or Western society. I want you to feel empowered and validated once we finish up today. So a quote that I took from Dr. DeGruy, she said, "People of African descent are resilient. We are a miracle." Well, why are we a miracle? I know a lot of us walk around, we don't feel like miracles. We don't act like miracles. We don't think like we're miracles. In fact, a lot of us probably feel the extreme opposite of a miracle. Well, let me empower you and encourage you today. Black people, we have mastered ways to adapt and survive overwhelming experiences while simultaneously preparing for ongoing threats in a hostile world. So what that is saying, we know how to adjust. while simultaneously protecting ourselves at the same time. Do you know how much energy and willpower that takes? You know how much creativity that requires. That's why if you look into history, a lot of some of the greatest inventions were created by Black people. That's that need to survive and protect ourselves that pushes us in a realm of being exceptional creators. And I think that's excellent to acknowledge. While the pain that gets us to that position is not always pleasant, but sometimes the outcome of that, it has created a beautiful people. We're so unique, we're not like any other group. But that also means that there are a lot of similar or unique problems because of this, having to constantly live in a pressure cooker all the time. So, what exactly is post traumatic slave syndrome when you look at it compared to PTSD? Very similar, very similar. So, post traumatic slave syndrome is the survival tactics that are the results of multi generational oppression of people of African descent. And what Dr. DeGruy explains is she said that Black people went through slavery, didn't get treatment. Then we went through systemic racism through Jim Crow, we didn't get treatment. And then now there's this more contemporary style systemic racism that plagues us, and we still didn't get treatment. So here it is. If clinicians, if we can diagnose people who have been in combat, and we can diagnose people who've been in car accidents, or who've had traumatic experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder, then why have we completely turned our heads to the idea that maybe, just maybe, Black people as a whole have been the victims of their own trauma and systemic racism? Why can't we honor that as a people? So that's what Dr. DeGruy has done. We're honoring the idea that Black people are not bad or broken. We are traumatized. We are extremely traumatized. Some of the behaviors and the ways of being and the ways of not being, because sometimes there's a habit where Black people don't show up to certain things, self-sabotaging behaviors, the violence, a lot of these things that are coming up. It's not an issue of us being bad or broken. It's like, what has happened to you where you have to show up in the world this way? Well, pick me: slavery, systemic racism, being dehumanized, being told that you won't amount to anything. So when you finally do amount to something, you don't believe it. That's called imposter syndrome. So there are a lot of reasons why we have post-traumatic slave syndrome. And then another point closely related to post-traumatic slave syndrome that I want to educate you about is the social learning theory. Well, for you people who said slavery didn't have anything to do with me, I don't even know why you're talking about it, Janae. Why everybody keeps talking about slavery. Old news. Slavery happened hundreds of years ago. Get over it. Well, there's something called social learning theory. Believe it or not, whether some people want to acknowledge it or not, even though you weren't slaves, you have still, through transgenerational trauma, learned to survive like a slave through something called social learning theory. And what that basically means is you have learned how to exist in the world based on your parents and relatives who have modeled how to survive in the world. Some of their survival tactics has come as a result of trauma related to racism. So while you may have a mom who her trauma may have shown up as yelling and getting angry really fast. Well, you didn't go through slavery, or you didn't go through the trauma that your mom has, but now you get angry really fast and you tend to yell. Well, I wonder where you got that from. And as we like to say, is you get it from your mama. That's where you got it from. And research shows that no matter how hard we try not to be like our parents, almost all of us will still end up being like our parents because of social learning theory. We will still learn from our social environment. So this is very interesting. So within the Black community, the status quo of existing has come from trauma surviving, trauma responses, hypervigilance, easy to anger, being dramatic, super irritable, maybe being very moody. Those things are survival tactics, and those have been the status quo. And those have been handed down through transgenerational trauma. So I have a question for you guys. What has your family taught you without actually teaching you. And the crazy thing about these survival messages and survival behaviors, sometimes they're not communicated directly. Like it's not you didn't go to class to learn these. You didn't have to write and read about these things. You knew it. Like, for instance, in my own personal family, my mom taught me through her survival behavior never to give up. Don't quit. Don't rely on others. Don't trust others, actually. Get it out the muscle. Do it by yourself. Do it alone. She taught me that through her behaviors and through her actions. Never said those things to me, but I knew exactly how I needed to operate in order to survive through her behaviors. And this topic does closely relate to the transgenerational trauma topic that we had a couple of weeks ago. So, what has your family taught you without actually teaching you? What have you learned? What have they taught you? Okay. Well, as you guys share in the comment section what you learned from your family, I'll move on to some very common things that run in the family. And I've already kind of talked about some of them. Um, being extremely anxious and needing to be in control and kind of go ahead of things. That could be a learned behavior as a result of trauma that you didn't experience, but that you learned. Um, being depressed or even showing up in an unhappy mood all the time, just being moody, maybe could be a learned behavior, or could be something that runs in the family as a result of this systemic racism that just keeps happening over and over. Hypervigilance, so being extremely overreactive to very minor stimuli. Um, insomnia, not being able to sleep or rest. Um, when I was studying about trauma and uh, overworking and hypervigilance, the number one thing that stuck out to me is rest. The reason why a lot of people in trauma responses don't rest, because rest is threatening. The brain and body is designed to protect itself. No one is ready for war when they're resting. This is why a lot of us can't sleep, because we have to be on guard and prepared for the next real or imagined threat that's coming our way. And self-loathing is kind of like self-hatred. A lot of Black people want to be everything but Black, and Dr. DeGroot talks about this. um, a lot of Black people are bleaching or having straight hair, and honestly, I do believe in preference, so maybe sometimes some people just prefer straighter hair, but I'm not talking about the people who are making a conscious decision just to express themselves. I'm talking about people who literally feel like they can't survive unless their hair is straight, unless they have a perm. It really causes a great deal of dysfunction in their normal day-to-day activities if they can't do something to alter their outward appearance as far away from Blackness as possible. And then there's the imposter syndrome I talked about. You have a group of people who have been referred to as animal or less than animals. And then you wonder why you don't feel like you're a good enough professional when you've had years of experience and training. You still have somewhere deep down in your soul internalized that you're less than, and you're equal to less than even maybe an animal. That's imposter syndrome. And then avoiding. Sometimes you won't even try. You just stop. You won't do it. Things that you need to face in order to get to the next level. And then constantly reliving your failure and figuring out what could have been different. A lot of times, things are beyond your control. It's not something that you caused. Sometimes it's systemic. Sometimes you have shown up as the best version of yourself, but due to things that are no fault of your own, you cannot advance. But it'll cause you to reprocess and relive and rethink, kind of like the flashbacks and PTSD, because your brain is just trying to make sense of it. How is it that I have all this education, all this experience, I've done the work, but I still can't get to where I'm trying to get to in life? And then there's the constant overworking, and that has a lot to do with just wanting to be respected, trying to get validation. Our worth is in our work. We're not seen, and we have never been seen as valuable unless we're working. Let's go back to slavery. We were crucified if we didn't pick enough cotton. There were consequences if you didn't produce enough. So I wonder why now we have this internalized idea that we got to work ourselves until we can't work anymore in order to be seen as valuable. And then the exaggerated responses. So that's caused by a lot of irritability. And of course we would be irritable and exaggerated after having all these other things that run in the family. Now, I don't want to pathologize everything. Sometimes people don't meet the criteria for anxiety and depression just because they have post-traumatic slave syndrome tendencies. But sometimes you just have symptoms of these things, and sometimes that's enough to keep you from advancing. So I'm about to get a little deep here. I want y'all to follow me. Why does the badness of Black people continue to be subliminally and overtly perpetuated? And if anybody feels like they want to answer that, you can, but we're going to discuss it right now. So why is it so easy for society to just label Black people or Black opinion people as bad? Why is it so? It's just customary. It's like we're going to automatically assume the worst of you. Like, why? Where does that come from? And if anybody wants to put in a chat, I'll take a look, but I'll tell you why. Labeling Black people as bad or broken justifies the injustice towards us. And Dr. DeGroot talks about this, when you look at the people who determine what civil is. So the people who determine what civility looks like are the ones who get to determine who's not so civil. And through the treatment of Black people through racism and oppression and through dehumanizing them, the only way for them to live with themselves and to justify humiliating Black people is by labeling us as bad. It's totally okay to treat Black people the way that we do if you're bad, so we can live with ourselves. So that's one reason. So racism really is a tool of justification for people who just need to be accountable for mistreating other people and to do better. This is why I have such a hard time with people who say, well, I don't see color. Well, we do need to see color, because when we don't see color, you can find yourself kind of passively camouflaging in that whole body of knowledge that says that bad people don't deserve respect, or that people who are Black are bad. All those things kind of clumped into one. So racism is not our fault. And I love the way that Dr. DeGroot helps us to understand the problem with racism. So I have even heard Black people kind of justify racism by saying, well, Black people are racist too. And this is the question that Dr. DeGroot posed that made my antennas go up, but I kind of already knew it just because of my research and reading about racism. She asked the question, how does a white person being racist impact a Black person? And the room that she was speaking to was able to come up with a list of things. Well, when white people are racist toward Black people, it impacts their power, their access to income, jobs possibly, education, access to resources. And then she posed the opposite question. Well, when a Black person is racist, how does it impact a white person? And the room went silent. And that's just it. Black people, we don't have access to power. Therefore, what we label as racism really isn't racism, because we can't oppress white people. We don't have that kind of power. And it's evident when you ask that question. So I want to talk about contemporary racism, because if you have a group of people who has historical racism, and then we've learned how to survive based on how our parents have survived, and we have some transgenerational trauma, but now we have contemporary racism that we have to deal with. And it looks different because times are not different. We're not slaves anymore, so it looks a lot different. And you guys may have something I don't have on him, because my experience is not yours, but not getting promoted or hired when you know you're overqualified, or you know you've worked years on a job, and you know companies are more likely to hire people with less experience, and you've been there, just constantly having a claw for the respect you deserve within a professional environment. Being overeducated and underpaid. There are some people who may not look like you, have less education, but maybe make way more than you do. When your natural way of being and existing in the world is labeled as illegal or inappropriate. That's what contemporary racism looks like. Injustice within the justice system. Um, this makes me cringe. I've seen so many cases where um, people will commit a crime of different races, but the black appearing person or black person will have a sentence that's 2 or 3 times more than that. Well, why does that happen? That's a rhetorical question. I would imagine there's some systemic racism or injustices happening within a system designed to be equitable or fair. And then there are microaggressions. Microaggressions communicate you don't belong here. So that is an example of that is being followed around a store, or just being looked at funny when you're the only in the room, or when you are the only in the room and they make you jump through hurdles and go through an obstacle course just to be acknowledged or get respect. And then I would say Black Death going viral. This is the biggest one. When I decided that I wanted to talk about this next, I considered the shootings that just took place in Jacksonville, Florida, and also the shootings all over the place. And it's happening where Black people are being killed by, you know, within terrorists here, homeland terrorists, and then also, the constant police killing of people who are Black and brown appearing. And we watch that stuff on the news over and over and over and over. You see it on social media and it becomes viral, and it has to take a toll on your psyche. Sometimes on days like that, I go on social media and I intentionally don't comment about the situation, but I am very observant. And I want to say, I just wish my people would just get offline. It's not safe for us. I know it's hard because sometimes you need a place to vent. I encourage you to find a support system, a therapist, a community of friends, homeboys or homegirls, church members that you can maybe sit and get face to face to love on you and support you, and where you can vent, because online is very dangerous. Because oftentimes when we're online, we're isolated, but the information that we're just absorbing continues to perpetuate some of these things that keep us from advancing psychologically. It validates that we're not good enough, and that we our lives are just not valuable to other people who don't look like us. So I want to talk about complex trauma. In the brain, we have an internal alarm system built in our amygdala in our brains. Whenever there is a real or perceived threat, that internal alarm system fires off. When that alarm system fires off, our body goes into survival mode. Adrenaline gets pumped. We get tense because we're ready for war. The cortisol hormone starts to pump, which is a stress hormone. And that's what happens when we're traumatized. But the issue with complex trauma, that's being traumatized over and over and over and over again by a combination of systemic racism, oppression, all of those things in history that I talked about, and then now these contemporary traumas that I just talked about. Our brain and body wasn't designed to be overworked like that. Eventually, the system is going to shut down. And when the system shuts down, it looks like just being stuck, being negative. Being hopeless, not being able to be positive, kind of overthinking, not believing that things will work out, giving up. That's what it looks like. It looks like being having eating disorders, meeting the clinical criteria for depression. It looks like overwhelm. It looks like I don't want to eat today. It looks like I'm going to overeat today. It looks like I'm going to keep hopping from job to job because I just don't feel comfortable in my own skin. And I know somebody is probably listening to me like, that's me, or I know somebody like that. It just looks like someone who has given up. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't see people from a complex trauma lens. We'll label them as lazy or bad or just get over it. So I want you, after today's discussion, to really start to see, especially people like Black people who have this systemic issue that nobody ever really honors. Give some grace. This is hard. It's hard not knowing what's bothering you or what's happening, and it's there due to no fault of your own. So Just give some grace to Black people. I love Issa Rae when she says, I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Exactly. And this doesn't discredit everybody who isn't Black, but one of the quotes that I came up with, and I'm going to paraphrase my own quote, but Black joy has kind of become the standard of celebrating, like how we have parties, all these gender reveals. I mean, we go to the 10th power when we celebrate. And I can see why we're the standard. When you look at how far removed the joy is from the pain that we live with, that's a good way to honor that pain by having our joy be the standard, because it took a lot to get there. It took a lot to get there. So yes, it is totally okay to root for everything that's Black. It needs to happen. Honestly, I think that's where the healing will come from. So how can we reduce re-traumatization? Now, we do know some of this contemporary trauma is far beyond our control. First thing I will say is through self-preservation, self-care. You have to be aware of what the cause of your suffering is and make sure that you're doing everything the opposite of that or as far away from that as possible. You have to take care of yourself. And self-care looks different for everybody. So I would encourage you not to mimic what you're seeing on TikTok or seeing on Facebook. Your self-care regimen is unique to you. My own personal definition of self-love or self-care is making tiny decisions throughout my day to just keep me on my own mind. Think of myself. So instead of just having the natural tendency to want to take care of other people, it's like, okay, what can I do for me? If I don't feel like doing something, nope, we ain't doing that. That is self-preservation. But sometimes this systemic oppression puts us in a position where we feel like we got to claw at being great, and we won't try to self-preserve. We start to take care of other people, and self-preservation goes out of the window, and those cycles continue to happen. So we have to learn to take care of ourselves. Limit exposure to the degradation of Black people. Anything that minimizes, humiliates, belittles the Black people, stay away from it. Don't read it. Don't absorb that. It's no way you're going to heal with that stuff constantly being poured into your spirit. Remember what hurts you. If something hurts you, don't do it again. Don't do it again. Limit time on social media and watching news, please. Which brings it back to a point. There's a local business here, Kenneth Grant Inspirations. They actually did my professional shots that you guys see on my website. They one of their art galleries that they're doing now is really focused on highlighting positive and impactful Black people in a positive light. They shared that they Google, Black people or Black, I forgot the exact word, on Google, and saw that it was just all negative. Media is designed to perpetuate an agenda. Why? Unfortunately, we tend to continue to gravitate toward things that degrade Black people. We want to watch it. We want to see it. I don't know why it's appealing. Maybe it seems normal. Maybe we see ourselves in the material, so it's very relatable. Therefore, we're attracted to it. But in order to start to kind of operate from a different angle, we got to start instilling different into our spirit. Something positive has to be deposited so it can come out. Be a gatekeeper. What does that mean? If you are somebody who has overcome something that is extremely difficult for Black people, reach out and help somebody. Teach them your ways. Teach them how you got to where you're going. Be helpful. Don't get to where you are in life and then close the door and not help anybody else out. And then get comfortable taking up space. Don't play small. And that kind of goes into the gatekeeper. I will talk for myself. I don't consider myself, I'm not a famous therapist, but I am an effective therapist because I try to be, and I'm very conscious of that. But now that I am confident in who I am as a therapist, I am reaching back and I'm helping other therapists that look like me and some who don't look like me. I don't play small. I'm very comfortable with what I can and cannot do as a therapist, and what I cannot do does not determine how terrible I am. It's just give me more to learn so I could be greater. So be comfortable taking up space. A lot of times as Black people, we're taught to play small, because if you play small, that means less trauma. That means you're more secure. Sometimes playing small means security. So we will continue to do that. But also, playing small means no visibility. Playing small means you can't be a gatekeeper because opportunities are not going to be available for you because you're invisible. So it's time for us to step out and play big. So the healing journey. I know this word makes a lot of Black people cringe. Why does healing make Black people cringe? If somebody wants to answer that question, they can. Because healing puts us in a vulnerable position, and we can no longer do that protection thing I was talking about, where we've learned how to simultaneously adjust and protect ourselves at the same time. Healing means you let the guard down and you start to walk a different walk and sing a different tune. And that feels very unsafe and very scary because it's not familiar. So, how can we heal? Through loving communication styles, that positive talk I was talking about. Learn how to fill people's cup. Speak life, speak positivity, learn how to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We have to stop this. I'm going to call it this like grayish blue type speaking where everything is bad or broken. And the only thing we can do is complain about things. Through practice, wellness is a skill. Through practicing how to speak positively, you will master that skill and eventually it'll be a lifestyle change. Create safe communities. Find your people, find the people that make you feel safe emotionally and stick with them and check in with them often. Tell your story, tell your pain. And then to the other side of that, listen to other people's pain. We got to stop minimizing people's pain and listen to what they're saying. Listen to other Black people when they say they hurt. Just because it doesn't hurt you doesn't mean that their pain isn't real. Trauma survivors can either repeat the cycle or generate the solution. The solution is in the trauma. Look at what hurts, collect that data, and create a plan to create the opposite of the results that you've always gotten. In order to do something you've never done, you got to do something you've never done. You got to think differently. Go to therapy. And I know therapy may not be safe. Maybe try group therapy. Maybe try a self-help book. Maybe try talking to someone in the church first and then kind of build your way up. Because believe it or not, getting support is also not getting support is also a trauma response. Of course, no one's going to get help and get therapy if you've made to believe that you're bad or broken and that's just the way you are. Why go get therapy? This is just who we are. Identify and become familiar with family patterns. This is so important. If you know that mom yelled because of her irritability caused by some trauma that you're unaware of, be very aware not to yell. Stop that pattern. Embrace empathy instead of blaming. No self-blaming, no blaming others. This is nobody's fault. I saw something on social media said where trauma is not an excuse for your behaviors, but it's just to help you understand. And that is so true. I mean, we understand that something has happened to you, that you have to show up this way, but we also understand that recovery is possible. And through the right support systems and creating safety, you can begin to grow in another direction. Recreate a new narrative. Like, you don't have to tell the same old stories over, that negative story, the one where you are self-pitying, self-loathing, self-deprecative. Speak life into your situation, into yourself. Have an I can vocabulary. I can do this. I can do anything I put my mind to. Anything that you imagine or think, you can produce. Motivate yourself. I don't care if you have to get a thesaurus and find some better words to start to use and journal those words, but you got to change the tune of the song that you sing. Cultivate a climate of respect within the family. Dr. DeGruy did a study for adolescent Black males, and in that study, she just determined that the number one solution to reduce violence in young Black men was access to respect. So create a climate of respect within the family. Well, what does that look like? Respect looks like honoring people's power and presence, listening to them, not invalidating them, giving them roles and responsibilities that match their gifts, being flexible, because we are always evolving even within the family unit. Be flexible and allow family members to change and grow and not be so rigid all the time. But we need respect. Respect is essential to healing past PTSS. So I have a few true or false just to check understanding. Put T if it's true, if it's false. Everything traumatizes everyone equally. Is that true or false? That is false. Some people experience an event and one person will be traumatized, one person will not. So it just depends on the person and their threshold tolerance and experiences. The gift of trauma is creativity. Is that true or false? That is true. Trauma will make us creative. You got to be if you're trying to survive. Irritability can be socially learned. That is true. It can be learned through social learning theory. Um, Everything can be learned through social learning theory. Post traumatic slave syndrome validates the Black experience. True or false? That is true. We are who we are because of what we've endured and been through. It is easy to heal when you are in survival mode. True or false? That is false. It is extremely hard to heal when you're constantly trying to look over your shoulder to predict or prevent the next attack that may or may not be coming, but you're so accustomed to coming. So I recommend two books this week. You know, I always leave you with something that you can chew on in your own personal time. And I would say get Dr. Joy DeGrew's book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And then she also has a study guide that goes with that. I'm telling you, you might want to do this in a group. You may not want to read this alone. It's some good stuff in there, some stuff that make you like eyebrows raise. You might want to fight the air after you read it because you might see yourself in it, and it may be really hard coming to terms that this is something I'm dealing with and I needed to work on. You know, I always leave you with resources. You know, you have 988 if you find yourself in a crisis. The text crisis line 741-741. The Universal Suicide Hotline, and then there's Psychology Today if you need a therapist. Psychologytoday.com. Are there any questions, thoughts, feedback on post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Well, as these questions roll on in, I got a few questions myself.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since we are talking about this is, a very sensitive topic, and with now a lot of people trying to be intrinsic of who they are, culture, different things, dealing with that. What is the best way, to really have open discussion with people of the opposite race about this topic?
I think one, you got to have people on the other side who are open, who are ready. Everybody's not ready on the other side. Shoot, everybody's not ready on our side, so you got to have people who open on both sides, and that takes time because remember, this is about trauma on both sides. Remember I said the whole issue with racism is that it justifies people who are supposed to be civil, so that way they don't seem so barbaric. That is traumatizing to come to terms that, wow, my people were not nice or barbaric, or so that's traumatic, and it's hard to get over that. And then on our side, coming to terms that, wow, I really haven't been able to live to my full capacity due to these systemic things that are no fault of my own. I'm powerless, and sometimes that powerlessness keeps us from wanting to address things. We don't want to feel our feelings. So I'm not going to talk about nothing that's too overwhelming and too much because I don't want to feel that. So getting people together who are ready, that means they're ready to heal, they're ready to do the work, ready to have those conversations. And I have met people on both sides who are ready.
Okay. Also, with the one of the points that you spoke about was that workaholic thing. I definitely can see that with our culture. You know, it's kind of work, work, work. Got this job, got that job, because we're always trying to stay ahead, because it seems like we're always underneath. You know, it seems like every time you get 2 steps forward or 3 steps forward, you get something going, something in the economy or society step takes you back, and you don't realize it, and you get in this cycle of always trying to get the next best move. You know, I know one thing with our generation now is, you know, there's always another network marketing business. You know, I do network marketing, but you know, however, it's always one trending or something that you're doing. And so because people are always looking, okay, what can I do to get myself to the next best thing? So how do you balance the finding a good opportunity, but still working hard enough that you're not overworking?
I think just self awareness. I mean, concern yourself with the things that cause you suffering. Like, if you are overworked, then clearly you're suffering. So I know this seems very logical, and a traumatized mind doesn't conceptualize logic. But if you are overworked and it's stressing you out, logic says then work less. But the issue with working less is it's literally putting you in a crisis mode because you're wondering if you're going to make enough money, if you're good enough. So really having some time with a therapist or yourself to really understand the realities of what you're dealing with. How much of this is reality and how much of it is a trauma response? And really sorting through that and kind of fact checking. Okay, if I am tired and I work less, it may feel like my world's going to end, but in reality, my world really isn't going to end. It just feels like it. And feelings are not always reality. So, what can I do to tolerate this very intense emotion as I'm trying to build better habits? So, some coping strategies, we call them distress tolerance skills, learning how to suffer well. Because change, there will always be a little season of breakthrough where you're going to suffer because of how you feel. But once you learn how to regulate your emotions through coping, through distress tolerance, eventually you get to a place where it's not so distressful anymore. So you really need some skills to deal with working less and dealing with the trauma of that.
Okay. And also, I want to add: is there a difference between the male and female when it comes to this topic of that post traumatic slave syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. And I could go so deep, and there were so many things I could bring up, but just the idea that black men being more violent, that is a trauma response. It is, you have to be violent to survive. I mean, there's so many studies out there that shows when you take resources and things from a group of even animals. It was a study done on rats, and they deprived a group of rats of water and food. And then there was another group where they didn't. The group of rats that didn't have water and food literally started killing each other. So in that regard, and then when I think about the black female, obviously we know that both sides have violence, but I think it's more prevalent amongst males because it's more socially acceptable to be violent as opposed to being sad and recluse with men. But I think women tend to get, this mad black woman syndrome that they talk about, where black women don't take no mess. We're gonna stick up for ourselves. We're gonna be assertive. Don't try us. That is a survival skill. Like, you're not gonna try me. That is how we learn how to survive. And let me tell you, I learned this from my mama. And guess what? My mama got it from her mama. So this is transgenerational trauma, but we got to learn there's a better way to communicate. Don't try me. That doesn't come off as, I guess not being able to be in healthy relationships with people at work or anywhere. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes we are existing as our natural selves. But the question is, what has happened to us where this is how we have to show up?
Okay. Another question that just popped in my mind, kind of two-part. How can you help men? Because I feel like, especially now, and this is one reason why I'm advocating for mental health and therapy. How can you help men that they are going through that, but they're not in tune, or they're in denial about the aggression, and it's kind of a passed down thing, but because of their history and what they've been through and how they were treated, they don't even get that, hey, I'm harsh at times, or I'm aggressive at times, but when I get frustrated, I'm hard to talk to, and sometimes they'll take it as, oh, it's just because I'm a man, or oh, it's because of the principle that I stand for.
Well, as a therapist, my therapeutic answer is you don't, because if someone doesn't see something as a problem, they won't have the motivation to work on it. People have to be ready to work on that type of stuff, because I can't work harder than them, right? But as a person, let's say I had a relative or somebody that way, I think just bringing it to their attention when you talk in a respectful way, going back to what needs to happen for healing to happen, learning how to use love and kindness when we interact with family members instead of this abrasive, aggressive, and using shame and guilt to get family members to do things like, well, if you don't change, this gonna happen to you. Like kind of using fear mongering. That's not gonna make people feel safe. That actually creates more violence. So just making sure you're communicating in a very loving, kind, and respectful way, and also be open to the possibility that they're not ready and not taking their not readiness personal. So that way you're not breaking down the relationship, because we need somebody like that needs all the support they can get.
And my last question, um, how would you say that this plays on the emotionality of such people when it comes to expression or even being honest about what hurts? I think that's been a big cover up for our culture is actually being attuned and being honest with what hurts, because it's almost like you're forced to take it, and you're forced to deal with such trauma just because of who may have be bringing it to you or being the perpetrator of the situation.
Mm. I honestly think a lot of us not don't even know. A lot of people don't know that they don't know what's happening to them. Like, I think so many of us live in ignorance, and because we're in survival mode, we're too busy adjusting and protecting that we don't have the emotional energy to really be aware of what's happening emotionally. We know sometimes we know we're tired and sick and tired. Have you ever heard people say, I'm sick and tired, but they can't really tell you what they're sick and tired of? They know something's off. Something ain't right, but I don't know what's off. Well, how are you going to ever deal with the what if you don't know what's off? And the reason why you don't know what is because you're in survival mode. Like I told you, when you're in a crisis or a survival mode, the brain does not logically deal with things. It only deals with things. It only takes what it needs and discards the rest because it's trying to survive. So it really takes having conversations like this. Someone just telling you, maybe pause and reflect and figure out what's happening on the inside of you instead of being so overly concerned to what's happening on the outside of you. Because that's what protection does. Protection says be hyper vigilant about what's happening around you, while you never honor what's happening on the inside of you. And we are a combination of many things: thoughts, feelings, and emotions. The emotions are what's on the inside. So spending some time reflecting on what's happening internally, what's happening in my body, what am I feeling? What emotion connects to this feeling that I have in my body? How often am I feeling this? What triggers this feeling for me? What makes me feel better when I have this feeling? But this takes a safe environment to get to that point of really opening up to the answers to those questions and implementing that.
Okay, awesome. Well, that is my questions. But is there any certain way that if somebody was listening and they want to reach out to you for more questions, is there a way for people to contact you or get a hold of you?
Sure, text me at 386-400-3100. It's going to come right to this phone right here. So 386-400-3100. Very easy number.
Okay. Well, thank you, Janae, for today. Today's topic was definitely uh, a touchy one, but good information to one help us all heal, because I believe we all can learn something. I definitely learned some things that I didn't know. So going forward, so that we can one build that community together and understand that it's always you always have to have a safe environment to grow. It's just like when I think about planting or harvesting. If it's too hot, it'll scorch the plant. So the environment has to be just right for it to germinate and grow. So this is our germination place. for the different things that we speak about. We come on here so that you can have a safe space to ask any questions, or if you don't feel comfortable asking it on here, please reach out to her, text her. If you say, hey, I got this question, or I have this burning desire to get this answered, but you don't want people to know, it's okay. But we're here to help you because mental health is important. There's too many people losing their life to suicide or depression because they don't have a safe place or somebody that they can go to. So this is what this platform and this Therapy Tuesday is created for, because our heart yearns to help the people, our people, other people, God's people. We're here to help, because if you can't think straight, if you can't be okay within, how can your family be okay? How can your dreams be okay? How can your vision be okay? And so we're trying to hit every aspect. And with that said, as we're getting closer to the end of the year, I want you all to, on the chat, or when you see a post, tag some things that maybe you want to talk about or get in. We're trying to plan for next year. So we want you all's involvement and opinion. So we can know where we're going, because we want to feed you. We want more people to come out. We want everybody to get what they need. We might be virtual, but this space can be impactful, and you can always go back to it. So, Janae, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. Thank you for always being available, always bringing information that is uplifting and that is practical for us to use. Thank you for your time today. All right, y'all. So I pray that you got something tonight that was good, something that you can hold on to, some tips that you can take with you. We're just excited about where this is going. We're doing a lot of things here at Love and Faith to help the community, grow spiritually, emotionally, and internally, because ultimately, like I said, you have to be okay with you first. Before you can even want somebody to accept you, do you accept you? Do you accept your past? Do you accept the journey that you had to go on? So, we're all healing together in some form or fashion. So I just pray that you got what you needed on tonight, and that you have a safe week. And just thank God for just you coming out and being here with us. I'm going to say a quick prayer for us. Also, if you want to give into the ministry for what we're doing with Therapy Tuesday, so we can continue to grow it. We're looking to do some things in person. So we want your involvement. We want your support. So if you want to give, we have our Cash App, our Givelify, and let me put that up for you. Any way that you want to sow into the ministry and what we're doing here with Therapy Tuesday, as well as there's some things that we have coming up. We have service, our Bible study service on Thursday at 7:30, and then we'll have a Sunday service this Sunday that will be virtually. And so we are excited about that, as well as the different partnerships that we have. We are partnered with Eternally Equipped Christian Apparel. So if you go to their website, or you want to scan the QR code, you get 20% off of your order. We have some new things that's about to launch and drop with them, so I'm excited about that. So, we're just trying to be a church of many things and branding and growing together. So I pray that you are blessed this evening. But before we go, I have to pray. I have to just do what thus says the Lord. Father, I just thank you for this time, this moment, this opportunity. I thank you for every ear that came to hear. Father, every ear that needs a healing, God, that there will be something that you speak to their soul and their mind on tonight. Father, any situation that is going on, that somebody's been crying out to you, Father, I just ask that you wrap your arms around them today. Father, that there is no distance in your prayer. There's no distance in your spirit. So, Father, I just thank you right now in the mighty name of Jesus of what you're about to do and how you're about to grow. How you're about to grow, God. Oh, I feel that. God, how you're about to grow your people in this next season. Father, that there's 3 months left, God. But God, this is going to be the best 3 months of their life if they'll just say yes. So, Father, I just thank you and I praise you. In Jesus Christ's mighty name. Amen, amen, amen. Well, thank you all for coming out. We love you. We love you. We will be having prayer on Friday morning at 6 a.m. The Lord has been impressing some things on me. So if you want to join us at prayer, it will be on Zoom. Please join us at prayer at 6 a.m. It is a time for praying and fasting and to get to your next level, because your next is now, and God is about to do some things to propel you forward. My covering bishop, he said something in his service this past Sunday, and I love it, so I'm gonna say it. But you got to tell hell no. You have to tell hell no. There's things that have been trying to destroy you and bring you down, but when will you say no? A lot of times we have said yes. A lot of times we have fallen into it, but when will you tell hell no? I'm telling you, this is your time, and take strength this last quarter. Take strength and be encouraged for what it is that God has put in your heart so that you can continue to go forward. But I love you. I love you. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining us tonight on this Therapy Tuesday. God bless.